Hey everyone, how's it going? This is your host Yoshino, and I'm here with filmmaker Saman Cash, and this is Arts Decoded episode 129.1. And we get the opportunity to talk to Nikolaus Summerer, who is the DP of Dark.
And the reason it's a 0.1 and this is a two-parter is actually because we interviewed Nikolaus back in early 2018. And after season 2, we decided to do another recording. And when Yoshino and I looked at it, we said this would be fun to do like a before and after because, Nikolaus kind of blew up after the first season of Dark. He just caught everybody by surprise and everybody was really into it. And he got like a bunch of work, bunch of offers, features. And so it was interesting to kind of see like what happened to him after like about a year and a half. Like how was season 2? What are his feelings towards the business? Is he excited? Is he pumped? Did he get jaded? Did he become pretentious? Who knows? I think, we're both really interested in everything behind the art, not just the art. And some of that has to do with politics and, people's mental health and emotions, as they continue working and striving to achieve their dreams. So here's part 1, 0.1. And hopefully if you like it, 0.2 will be the next episode where we interview him very recently about season 2 and other things. Enjoy. Nick's joining us. He's a cinematographer. He recently has worked on a show called Dark, which many of you, I'm sure, have seen. It's on Netflix. German science fiction awesomeness. Probably, I would say it's the best looking show on Netflix right now. Thanks to you.
Thank you.
We're gonna just kind of pick his brain and talk about stuff and talk about what you're up to, and then go from there. So, could you tell us a little bit about the show, actually?
The show is, it's the first Netflix series. It's a little bit more mysterious, actually, than it is science fiction. Mm-hmm. But it's, tell you a little bit about it. It's a small town in somewhere Germany, not specific anywhere, and a child's going missing. Mm-hmm. And then another child is going missing, and people all go crazy, obviously. And you see in the first 2 episodes, you see the different people in this town having difficulties to dealing with this. And everybody has also their kind of like dark spot within them. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of things going on and a lot of things are wrong. And then suddenly a child appears. There was not one of the missing ones, but a different one. And it appears that this child is dressed in different clothes, and it seems like it's more kind of like an 80 thing. Well, has a Walkman, has the shoes that he's wearing are kind of like some Jordan shoes and things. So they're looking into this, and after a while we understand that there's about time travel involved in the whole thing. And
interesting.
Well, I don't know if I can tell more about it.
I think that's good. That's a good hook. That's a good hook line. You got people past like what is the show going to be about?
Right.
So that's interesting. So it's about not only is there like the darkness and the tone and the atmosphere of the film and the subject, but there's kind of darkness within the characters that you explore.
Right. So dark everywhere.
Dark. It's all dark. Darkness exists right now. Yeah. And so you're actually about to start season 2, right?
That's right. Yeah, we Netflix very early on, because it was pretty well received. They decided to have a second season, and at the moment they're writing on it, and we starting prep after Easter in April. Yeah, it's going to be another couple of episodes, and we're shooting basically through the whole year. And
how many episodes?
8. This
episodes?
Time, it's going to be
how
only
long
8.
Is your shoot?
We're talking about 110 shooting days for all this. Yeah,
that's epic.
We had a lot. We had 105 on the first season and about 40 plus days for the second unit. But now the director wants to do more second unit himself. Well, actually, not put it in a second unit, but just do everything himself. So we talk about maybe
longer.
100, 110.
So what's the average? Days. What's the average shoot day per episode?
Shoot day per episode was about, I think it was 13.
14? Okay,
14.
13, 14. Yeah. That's interesting. Well, just for anybody, like the average shoot day for like a lot of television is between like 8 to 10 days. So that's a solid amount, especially for, Netflix can be pretty quick about stuff. But what's interesting about the streaming platforms is that whole model of episodes are changing, because a lot of traditional television, you don't have like a single director.
Right.
You kind of have someone that starts the look, maybe does a couple of episodes, and then hands it off to other directors. And that's not always that's not always by choice. A lot of times it's just timing. It's the only way to get, the show moving is like kind of like leapfrogging, overlapping directors and stuff like that. So streaming content has been very fascinating to watch. Directors doing the whole season.
Absolutely. This is the other thing. We are not so used to it, with having linear series. So this is the first one in Germany, and so it's kind of like also the first one that we're really dealing with. So how to wrangle this beast. There were talks about it before, whether the director, who is also the showrunner, together with his partner, whether they kind of like function as showrunners sitting behind the different directors, to go through the different episodes. But then after a while, and because of also, it's a healthy budget, but we also have restrictions, and we have to make sure to get everything in. It's also, there have been a lot of locations that have to be very well dressed. There's also a lot of studio stuff in there, what is cost effective, and it's also a very, very big cast. So at the end, we decided it would be the best if the director directs all the episodes, and if me and the production designer and everybody else, they just also stay on the series for the whole 10 episodes. So we treated the whole thing as one big 10-hour feature film. Went to one location, shot everything at this location, and moved on to the next one.
Instead of shooting episode to episode, which saves money.
Absolutely.
It's definitely harder to wrangle like tone, though, because it's like, obviously, I mean, just even shooting a feature, you have to know if you're shooting page 5 and it's just warming up, and then you're shooting the most intense scene at the end, it could be kind of disorienting.
That's especially for the director to keep everything together, and also for continuity. Always carrying around 10 books to make sure that certain things are lining up. For sure. So yeah,
that's interesting. Yeah. That's an interesting element to shoot completely out of order for like 10 hours worth of a show.
Yeah,
that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's really ambitious.
Yeah. It is really ambitious. Yeah.
Do you prefer working on projects like this particular project, or do you prefer working on like a feature, or what?
I'm kind of missing the 2 hours kind of like storyline, following a character through the ups and downs of his life and time, and then arrive somewhere after 2 hours. With this thing, it's a little bit different, right? Because you just follow so many characters actually, and it's not really clear who is actually the one that you should follow and that you kind of like identify with, right? Your, let's say, hero of the whole story. But then again, especially now when it comes to the German market and having an opportunity to create something like this is a huge, huge thing. There's just nothing like this equivalent. Also in the details that we work on, and how ambitious, as you said before, everything is. And, we all want to excel in our work, and so many people looking at us, and also then being on this Netflix platform with all these other shows, House of Cards and Bloodline and whatnot, and you want to be like on eye level with all of them, but you have different tools, and you have maybe a different history of these storytelling things, and it's just it's challenging, but it's also very rewarding in a way when you actually.
Yeah, think about when, as somebody in the States, think about when the last time you watch like an international show, like unless you're just like actively like, 5-6 years ago, you'd have to like pirate a season of a foreign show, and so the fact that this is, being promoted up there with like House of Cards and stuff, and it's like a German speaking show. I mean, that's pretty cool. Like that shows, I think, like where we are in kind of time where like people can look past, oh shit, I'm reading subtitles, because that's something that people are always scared of, is like, oh my God, how many
our audience is gonna have to read this thing, you know. So I think that's.
But it's also
testament.
English dubbed too, right?
It is English dubbed, yeah. But most people who actually watched it or start watching it in English dubbed, they were not very happy about it.
You're able to switch though, aren't you?
You are, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, you are.
That's what I did. That's the first thing I.
But
did.
yeah, a lot of people,
I was trying to watch it
actually
English dubbed, and
oh, you did?
I think it reads truer when you just read the subtitles, you know, and it's in German.
I'd be curious what they're going to do with season 2. I wouldn't be surprised if it is going to default people to German with English subtitles, and there's an option for dub rather than.
I'm not sure. I mean, they certainly have their numbers of how many people really actually watched it in the dubbed version.
But that's
but the
because
showrunners they were asking everybody, please watch it in German with the subtitles.
But that's what I'm saying though is I think that people watch it because they don't know there's a choice. Like
Right.
I know most people they don't set the language. Like some people don't even know there are options in Netflix. They just hit play and then exit.
Right.
You know, so I think like if there is a way to communicate to people, hey, if you really don't like reading, here's a dub. Because there are some people who just reading and audio and like reading is a very logical thing for some people, and it disturbs. Like I know for me, it used to be like that, but I grew up watching a lot of anime, and I'd watch it in like Japanese language and English subtitles. So it's like there's no problem with me doing that. But I think like this is like the first big show. I think it's a foreign show that's being promoted internationally, though. So I think like Netflix is still figuring shit out too. You know?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Well, cool.
Yeah. I do have a question. So how did you get into cinematography?
That was a long way. I started, well, the first thing that I kind of like was, how do you say this, exposed to cinematography was when I was about 15, 16, and we're watching all these movies, Freddy Krueger and Friday 13th and all these horror things.
Yeah.
And also Shining one day. And you remember this scene with the little boy sitting on this, what is it, on a tricycle, going down the hallway. And I was just totally blown away. And I was thinking, okay, I don't know what this is and how this is, but I want to be responsible for pictures like this. I wanna do something like this.
This is at 16?
That was about 16, yeah. That was about it. So then I didn't really think about it anymore. I thought photography is cool, and I did a little bit of photography, but all in a very basic level. Mm-hmm. So when I finished school and I really didn't have any idea what I want to be, then I thought I want to work in commercial industry, and but I wasn't good enough in graphic design or anything. So I thought it's about the budget side. You're coming into this, so I studied economics. And from the first time I was sitting in, a classroom, I was thinking, I don't belong here. This is not for me. I just don't belong here. And I was, again, thinking about the cinematography, but not being brave enough at the time. I wasted 1.5 years with economics. And then
I just... like doing a career in economics?
No.
Majoring?
Studying.
Just majoring.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then I just quit it. But still wasn't brave enough to get into the film business because my family didn't know anybody at the time. I didn't know anybody.
So this whole time you knew you wanted to do film, but you kind of were discouraged from doing it.
Right. I thought it's just like a enclosed community, and you can only get in there once you have someone who unlocks the door for you.
It's interesting. That's because that's still something people say today. Even it is kind of a club.
Oh, it is. I think it is kind of like intimidating in a way, right? Because it's just so high up, like what you see, this the whole hero thing in cinema. Yeah, it's also to everybody who's making it. Yeah, these are special people. Well, so at the time I was just sitting at home, and my dad said to me, or my parents both said, okay, so you can do whatever you want to, but do it. Just don't sit at home and wasting time. Just do it. And that's when I called Ari and been kind of like begging them to take me into a rental house. To learn about the cameras.
So Ari is a company brand that makes cameras and film equipment and stuff like that.
And then I started on the set. They had a position as a lighting intern for a very small German TV series, and that's how I started. That was 95, about 20 years ago. Yeah.
And is that before? I know we talked a little bit a couple nights ago. Is that before you sat in on film classes or after?
No, before.
Okay.
So actually, the film classes came quite a bit later.
Oh, that's right. That was when
I-
you just felt like you weren't really
Right.
interested in the focus pulling and things like that, right?
Right.
And then you went to the academic side.
So I'm a pretty practical person, you know. I want to build something up, see it, and learn from it. Right? It works, it doesn't work, and then I do something else. I try something else. At the time, they started having cinematographer classes in the film school in Germany. We have a couple of film schools there, but I thought I'm a practical person. I don't want to really go on a film school. But as it happened, so I worked for Ari in Munich for a while and became camera technician a little bit. I worked at CSC in New York for a little bit and then came back and started as a camera assistant. But at the time, they started the cinematography class in the Munich Film School. They also had something, what do you call, like a guest student. So you're coming in, you can listen to everything what they're doing, you can be part of it, but you can't actually do something yourself, right? You don't have a budget or anything, you just be there and, well, if necessary, help or just listen. Open eyes and ears. But it happened that the cinematography class was just starting and they didn't really know what to do with these guys, right? There was not a real teacher there was not a real curriculum for them.
So what would they do? Just talk about films, watch films?
Yeah, a little bit. So there was like all the cinematographers. They were actually they applied for being directors with kind of like, what do you call it? Like the main topic cinematography. So that's what they were. But all the directors, they didn't really want to shoot anything. So whenever there was an exercise, they were trying to find someone who actually can shoot this. So while I was not even a student, they always turned around to me and said, "Can you do it?" And I was, "Yes, of course, sure, sure, I can do it." And that's when I realized actually the best thing that what can happen to me here is all these contacts that you're doing and making, and all these practice and training that you're just doing within
the community within the school was
in
probably
the school,
the most
right.
valuable thing.
So and then I applied the next year and they actually took me and that was the start of it all. And then I made connections, for example, with Bo, the director of Dark, and I did a couple of other features with him before. So that was actually the best thing that happens to me over there.
Wow.
Oh, you met him at university?
At the university, yeah.
Oh, okay.
He was a little bit ahead of me, like 2 years ahead of me. But it happens that he was doing first AD at a project of a fellow student of ours who did his thesis film, and he was the first AD. I was the cinematographer, and we kind of like get to know one another. We had the same humor. We had the same taste, and yeah. Visual style and everything, and so that's when it started.
And what do you feel about like when it comes to like sort of your taste? Like, can you explain a little bit about finding kind of, you know, because it's different as a director. Like we kind of have a thing we do or want to do, or at least people tell us that we do. With a cinematographer, there's kind of a craft. Like how have you felt like, you know, what's been your evolution of your style, or at least kind of how you look at making films? Is it completely dependent on directors? Do you kind of have a thing and the directors that pick you based on that kind of thing? Or just talk a little bit about that, like especially coming out of school?
Well, coming out of school, it's probably not so defined there, right? You just start and there's projects that they want to actually to be part of it, and you just try to support as good as you can. Later on, when you have a little bit more of experience, then you kind of like be a little bit more picky maybe and pick a project that speaks to you because of several reasons or whatever reasons. And once you have a project that you kind of like the screenplay, let's say, or the director is very interesting, at least I try to understand the director, what does he or she actually want to tell, and how do they want to tell it, and what is it that they don't like. And with all these things, I'm trying to define what the style could be for a story. You know, I don't think that it's like when you read a screenplay, obviously you have something in mind, but it's I'm thinking that I'm not the storyteller, right? I don't have stories in me that need to come out and being shown to the world, but I like to be a support for a director and do my little show on the campfire, you know, make it bigger, make it smaller and more shadows and I don't know, put something in what makes it the flames look green. That's what I'd like to do, right?
Caveman filmmaking.
The caveman filmmaking, right. So, it's a lot about understanding a director, I think.
Interesting. And so when you read like scripts, if you read it like blank, like how does that work versus rather like then, you know, when you meet a director and you have a style or they have a style and you know how they like shooting, like what's your process when you read the script? Do the images just come to you, or do you kind of read it just for entertainment and then kind of think about it later? Like, you know, like is it all kind of at once? Do you sort of know how big the fire you want when you're reading it?
Well, often it's that you read it and it could be that a lot of pictures just coming towards you and they're just there and they stick with you under certain scenes and they make a certain impression of you and you're just trying to find in your head and all the drawers that you have in your head with all the visual impact that happens to you over the years and that you collected in there. How can you kind of like bring this onto this project? And some other projects and some other scripts, they need a little bit more attention in a way, right? You read it a second time and a third time until all these pictures really form. I always try to have a vague idea, at least, how I think the film could look like, you know, the visual style of a film, how it could be, and then talking to a director to figure out if we kind of align. Because I think in these first talks, it's also, you understand if you're not aligning, then maybe you should just not work together, right? And
you find that you have a pretty good instinct of that when you meet someone?
I'm getting better at it yet. There's people when I'm thinking like, okay, I like the script, but the approach of this other person is I'm not getting along with this. I would have to bend myself to actually make this work, and then I'd rather not do it, or I try to understand better the other person. If I'm really drawn to this project and I really want to do it, then maybe try to understand the person better to find a way.
Interesting.
That I realize that it's not bending. It's just a different point of view.
Or breaking, perhaps. Because it's like, that's interesting. So there is a spectrum of like where there's a certain type of execution that you're just like, okay, that doesn't interest me, or I don't agree with that. So you would say that you do have kind of a spectrum of not, I wouldn't necessarily say taste, but just your willingness to explore. But there's certain things where like that's just not something you're interested in, right?
Well, I guess, yeah, I would say so.
I mean, that's interesting, because I think like any time a default answer for a lot of DPs is like, my job is to be able to do anything, and it's just like I don't. That's never true. I don't think that's ever true. I think there's a natural sort of like, you know, it's like a color wheel, right? Like You're not every color spectrum. You're a spectrum, you know.
I guess technically I would be able to support a lot of stories and a lot of visions in a way, right? Yeah. But the older I get, and now I'm having a family and everything, I'm just being more specific of actually what is it that I want to spend my time with.
Interesting.
And I'm not taking on everything just for the sake of taking it.
Do you feel like, is there a logical sort of like response to when you decide you want to do something or not, or do you tend to trust like a feeling?
This always depends of the situation that you're actually in at this moment of time, right? If you need money, then you're maybe not so specific about which project you're taking on and which not. Also, which commercial, which music video, whatever.
Let's say money's not an issue. Just on like
so if money is not
level.
money is not an issue, then I would certainly only trust my gut feeling. Yes.
Cool. That's interesting.
No, well, then there's also the family part, right? And if something happens with the family, or you just did already 2 feature films and your family is just craving for attention, then then there must be a really strong point made with this project that
quantifies you leaving
that
them
the
again.
family understands that you're leaving again. Yeah, that's
Well,
right.
interesting, because you make it sound like the family part is the logical part, but I'm assuming there's also the emotion behind that as well.
There's the
So it's
emotion
like
behind
two emotions that you have to maybe logically referee which one is correct.
Right.
That's interesting.
It's not so much logic. I think it's more emotion.
But you just have two sometimes that you have to.
Well, you have to.
Because if you're
battle
emotionally
sometimes.
into something, and then you emotionally are like, my family is going to be mad at me or sad, or I miss my family, then it's interesting.
Which project that you've done do you feel like you've put the most time in, or not necessarily the most time in, but that you feel the most emotionally attached to?
I guess the most impression so far is still the first two projects that I had or that I did with Bo, who was also
Bo, same director,
yeah. There was our thesis film called Under the Sun, and the second was The Silence. These two projects, I think, because everything was just so new. The first thing was like, this is my first feature film in a way, even if it was just an hour-long piece, but it was the thesis film and shot on 35 millimeters, and everything was just overwhelming. And the second one, because it was the first commercial break, right, in a way, into the feature film world out there.
Yeah.
And I really wanted to succeed on these projects and give everything that I have. Not that I'm not doing this on projects that I'm doing now, but it's kind of a little bit still a repetition of you come there the first day, you think, oh God, how should I ever figure this out? And then just you work because you're kind of like trained to it, and then the train, gets on speed, and then it's just like running like a well-oiled machine. But in the beginning, it was just so, what is it when we fail? And then you be prepared, and you prepare, and so on.
So is it maybe the exploring that you like? You like the unknown more? You like the figuring it out? You like the organism of like, how are we going to survive this day? How do we get to this? How do we do that? Or do you think it was just because it was the first thing?
I think it was basically because it was the first thing. So but actually, all the projects so far, they made a strong impact to me. The Who Am I? What I also did with Bo was then the first bigger feature film, right, with German stars in there, and the story was just, it was a genre. Everybody was looking at us because genre is not something, German genre is not something that's doing well in German cinema, but we get a lot of attention from outside looking at us. Actually, they really were wishing for us that we succeed on this job, because everybody, or so many people in Germany, they want to write genre, they want to direct genre, and just be in it, part of it. But it's just not really working. But anyway, we succeeded with this film relatively well in the German cinema, and also, again, got a little bit of attention outside of it. And then came Dark, and so there was another Netflix film, The Siege of Jadotville, what was a period piece shot with an Irish director, with now suddenly Hollywood cast, right? Jamie Dornan was there, the main actor, and again me there, right? First time, all foreign crew, and wrangle this piece. Yeah. And then Dark, you want to be on eye level with all these other shows. So all these projects so far was always a step up from the level that I've been on. And so every one of these projects has been just really, really exciting and challenging. And yeah.
Do you tend to find like your relationships with your directors? Because, there's a lot of DPs, where you see them working with so many different directors. And then you see certain DPs where they just really pick kind of a few directors, almost like they kind of say yes to the directors more than just the project sometimes. Do you find that when you like a director, you're much more interested in sort of sticking with whatever they kind of want to do? Or are you very project to project? Are you very like, you separate the director and you pick from like, just, I like this project and this is what I'd want. Like if the director and I align, we go for it.
Good question. I think a good director DP relationship is also something that is very valuable, and you can learn from it. It's actually like a relationship with, a partner. you get to know the other person better, and there's certain things of figuring it out. They just, you don't have to do these anymore. They're just there, right? There is some base there, and you can build on it. And I think that's also, a great thing to do, to actually maybe start on a different level and maybe, arrive at a different level.
Yeah.
Interesting. I like the relationship metaphor. I definitely feel like that. Sometimes the relationships run its course too.
Yeah,
Sometimes,
absolutely. Yeah.
Like Dean Cundey and Spielberg. I mean, there's so much work that they did together, and then when Kaminsky came on, it was like he married another person. His relationship with Cundey divorced, and then.
I mean, especially when you work so closely with someone, it's like it's almost like, in a way, I mean, outside of maybe that creative practice, but it's like you're having like a really solid like business relationship, and it's kind of like you're entering like some sort of like marriage almost, because you work so closely with that person and on such a personal project too. But have you ever been disenchanted by the industry? And then have you ever been re-enchanted by it, or have you found a way to get out of that if you have been?
What do you mean exactly with disenchanted?
Disenchanted, like, because there's a lot of uncertainties with having a creative practice or within the film industry, and there's a lot of outside variables, a lot of things that you can't control, like if you get on certain commercials or if you don't get on certain commercials and things like that.
Or just like having notes from studios and just making compromises, things like that, right?
Yeah, making like artistic compromises.
Well, I guess the higher the budgets get, the more people talk, and the more people have something to say, and then you have to make compromises. But I've been very, very fortunate with the project that I've been on, with Bo, for example, as a partner, as a director. He's very strong in what he wants, and he makes very clear to all the producers, he has a certain opinion about how something should work or has to be. And of course, he also has to make compromises, right? But he is fighting very hard for his vision of a project. So that's very good. With other directors, they might be, more open to compromise, but I don't know. Yeah, maybe I was just very fortunate with the feature film work that I've never really been in a position like this. And I've also been, I didn't get a lot of notes from the production companies that I should change my work in a certain way. Maybe it was just taken away from me or held away from me. I'm not sure, behind my back, but I never...
It's interesting because, talking with Isaac and just other DPs, I think there's something kind of similar about that too. I think because you worked with Bo a lot, I think that if any compromise happens, a lot of it ends up going to Bo. So if anything is like, do you find your relationship with either Bo or other directors, do you have to compromise? Like, you believe in something for a certain scene and they disagree with you. And even though you're like, I believe this is right, like, have compromises like that ever discouraged you? Like, even in the moment, not necessarily now.
Yeah, well, absolutely, yeah. Of course, then you're frustrated and you think like, why them? I know that this is the right way. But then again, I mean, then I'm, only the cinematographer. Mm-hmm. So it's not my film, it's somebody else's film. And then I just have to step back. Or I'm stepping forward first and try to convince. But this is all kind of like work, what I'm thinking, or most of it has to be done in pre-production. Mm-hmm. So you wrangle about certain things. You know, but yeah, and then you start again 3 days later and try to convince with arguments, for whatever reason. But if he or she won't listen to you and make this mistake,
But I feel like those arguments too it can either like make or break relationships too. Yeah. With working relationships or what have you. But yeah, I think that's where a lot of respect can, if you have a very strong vision for how you want the film to look, and then you can add to that vision. Yeah, I think that's just how like good relationships are, in general.
Yeah, and then again, it's the arguments that you have about certain things are in general not about the overall look of and the overall visuality of a project. It's just more like about this scene, that scene, or how we gonna wrangle this scene, right? How do we break it? And then you just have a different opinion, but on the end, it's just like it's not really so important, right? Mm-hmm. It's just there's a meaning of the scene and there's main characters of it, and you just have to carve it out of it and just tell the story, and that's what it's all about, right? So
going off of like compromise and stuff, I mean, how do you just, I mean, my current state of awareness of like the business, the idea that, only, what is it? The stats that came out, only 4 people a year pay to go to the theater now, like a year. So it's like, how has any of this sort of, I guess not discouraged you, but what is sort of your feelings about that? Like, do you feel, is there any sort of like emotional pressure to sort of feel like, because like sometimes for me, I know like I'm always like, wow, like is the industry that I'm really interested in diminishing? And do you feel some of that, not necessarily specifically towards TV or film, narrative or anything, but is there any sort of feeling of that, or what are your thoughts on the kind of current state of the industry?
So for me personally, it's again, I really like going to the movies. I'm very often do it on my own, just being in there and totally, be in this movie and enjoying it. Sometimes doing this late at night so that there are not so many people in the audience actually, so that I can really
Absorb.
Yeah, and not have somebody talking next to me or popcorn
Coughing
eating
or some shit.
or phone or whatever, so that I can really be in the story. But I think, yes, it is absolutely changing quite a bit, and with all these streaming services that I'm really grateful that they exist, because, well, that's the reason why I'm sitting here, I guess. They kind of like, there's even more effort now that you have to make to actually get out of the house and off the couch and into a movie theater. And I think it's just the greatest thing to sit there and have the big screen and the sound around you, just like you've been enclosed by all this, and be there with your feelings towards the story. And at home, it's just different, because there's always some attraction aside from this screen in front of you.
Yeah.
Your phone, your partner, the food, you need to go to the toilet, the child, the cat, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's always something,
Yeah, for some reason, when you go to the film or when you go to the theater, there's something a little more precious. So you make sure you use a restroom before, so you don't have to go, during, and you make sure you have to be there on time and everything. I've actually been practicing that, where I'll go to the film and sit there by myself.
In the cinema, you're talking
in
about
the in the cinema, in the theater. Just go by myself and absorb the film and try to come to my own conclusions on like what I liked, what I didn't like, and like frame to frame, and really hone in and pay attention to it. Yeah, because there's all those distractions, right? The phone is a distraction,
Yeah.
It's interesting because I do think that like if you look at like the trigger of like, okay, I'm going to go see this movie, that means I'm going to entrust my 90 minutes to 2 hours plus to this filmmaker, to this film, to whatever the trailer I've seen or all the friends talking about it. There's a commitment to go in and go, cool, I'm in like a black hole of just focus on this entertainment. And I think, a little bit of the way the culture is, everyone's too busy. Even if it means too busy to go do this or do that, that doesn't seem maybe important if you were to actually kind of explain why. But that's just the way the world is right now, is everybody's moving so fast. And so to commit to something in the theater is different. But I will just throw a wrench in kind of that being why maybe people don't go. I mean, obviously, the Movie Pass stuff that's been happening lately with like the AMC Movie Pass and things like that, that's really been changing a lot of the game. A lot of people are actually, a lot more people are buying it. And I think that there's something to be said about like the way streaming platforms are. People are used to spending a certain amount of money a month to see content. And I think if people can figure out how to, have theaters, display these movies, and you can go and use your thing except for maybe blackout days or whatever, like the way Disneyland season pass or skiing season pass or whatever works, I think people will go, because I think people really do like movies. I think there's something, it's just, I think the amount of work and money they have to spend it's just not worth it. Studios are ripping people off. Like, why would someone want to go? I mean, you and I, all three of us would go see Lady Bird for $15 at a theater, but wait, the same price to go see a Marvel movie? Come on, like, it doesn't make sense. Like, really, Lady Bird should be $7-8, you know, for somebody regular to want to go and watch that movie. So I think the Movie Pass to me feels like, if we want movie theaters to survive, I think even Netflix, any of these companies that sort of either buy out theaters themselves, or whether all the theaters come together and have one big Movie Pass. I don't know, that seems to be something interesting there. And I guess part of me is wishful thinking that will be what, you know, helps. But I don't know. You know, I think streaming is a great platform. I'm guilty of wanting to stay home. Like, I was going to go see Black Panther tonight and I just didn't go see it. So I'm guilty of what probably a lot of people feel sometimes. I think the pressure of seeing a movie too doesn't help either. I think with a Movie Pass, you can just literally be like, I'm bored, I'm going to go see a movie. And they found that people who have Movie Passes too, stats are showing that people are more likely to go by themselves, which I find very fascinating. People who wouldn't go normally go by themselves when they have a Movie Pass. And so that's kind of interesting too. But I mean, what are your guys' thoughts on like the Movie Pass and stuff?
I mean, I think it's a great thing. I personally don't have it. I'm still buying regular movie tickets, but
well, it's also a little flaky too now, because a lot of the good theaters like ArcLight don't accept it. Some of the best theaters, at least in LA, don't accept the Movie Pass.
That would probably
They're
make
just
sense.
they're like, fuck that shit. That's the livelihood. That's the problem with theaters. You know, the way they were started, it's illegal for studios to own theaters. People don't know this, but it's not just like, oh, that's just the way it works. No, it's illegal. And it's funny because I think that is partly what's kind of hurting the business now, because people also don't know this, but 50% of all like profit is given to the theater. And then everything else is what the studio keeps, and then has to pay the actors and all this other shit. So it's like theaters are a little.
Who's defining the price of a ticket?
Well, I don't know actually. I think there's some. It's like a gasoline type thing. I don't know. It has to do with inflation, the cost of movies. But I mean, and advertising really isn't helped. Like, advertising costs 4 or 5 times what it cost like just 15 years ago to advertise stuff, especially with the internet. But I think the way, you know, the business is working, it's just we're not. People don't absorb advertising the same way they do. Like, that's and they're still marketing in the 20th century model when we're in a 21st century world. Like, people don't even Netflix has this trouble, as they don't know how to target their audiences. You know, they're still figuring it out. So it's like it's kind of weird. We're all making movies in a time where like they could really disappear like instantly.
Right. And
people, like, how many times when you go on Netflix, you go, what? These 2 huge actors were in this movie I never even heard about. But I think that, you know, I don't know. For me, I mean, I'd be curious with you, like, does that ever discourage you? Stuff like to think that you could make something that like will disappear?
Yes, it does. Yeah, I find it. I'm really hoping that Netflix, in a way, is kind of like stepping up to a studio status, and then they also screen the stuff that they having, you know, but more than just a week or so.
Yeah.
See something like Mudbound, who is, I would say that's definitely a film for the big screen. Then you watch it at home in your TV because, well, that's the only way. You know, that's it's just a shame.
Select theaters for what, a week or something,
right?
2 weeks,
and that's just a shame. So I'm hoping that they're also producing and going out there and you know, show it in the theater. It's a different experience.
It's so much money to have these companies pay the theaters to do that. It's such a club. You're not talking about a club, and I think that club needs to get a little destroyed. You know, I think I think until theaters are ready to like go bankrupt, I think that like it's going to be very hard to convince like places like ArcLight and these other places to accept Movie Pass customers.
But I mean, they have to come up with something different as well, right?
Yeah.
So the small movie theaters, they just all dying because nobody's actually going there. And the big ones, the entertainment theaters where you can buy all kind of food, and I don't know how the seats are, what they're all doing, and, you know, massages, I don't know what. But the small ones, it's just like, you know, that's just an uncomfortable seat. You're sitting there, you eat your popcorn, and who tastes different, or I don't know.
Yeah.
And it's
stale,
just
stale popcorn.
Yeah. And the row in front of you is just too close to your kneecaps, and just
well, I mean, I think that's interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess this is kind of one of those conversations that I think can go forever. But it's like I'm always curious when I meet passionate people like yourself that, you know, like I know I go through bouts where I'm just like, what's the fucking point of doing any of this? Like, I feel like this is all just disappearing. Like, let's just all quit and go do VR or some shit. But at the same time, it's like you realize that all the best entertainment, all the best stuff that people like watching are still films and still TV shows.
And see, people still go to theaters, to real theaters, to see actors acting on a stage, right? And to musicals and to all kind of like different intellectual entertainment in a way, right? So I think the movies, they will also survive. Different maybe,
I feel like so
and
too.
also in the theater, it's just an happening, you know, it's just on a date or so. Yes, it all changed with Tinder and everybody watches a film at home and then whatnot, but it still has some kind of like romance to it as well in a way. It's just like all this.
It has like some sort of nostalgia factor.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people, I don't know. I guess I can only speak for myself personally, but I love going to see films in person in theater. But I'd hate for it to go to. I mean, I logistically, like, things have to evolve with technology, right? But
I mean, we're so far away from VR and AR and stuff being practical entertainment for more than 10, 15 minutes, you know? I think that for long form, nothing beats the passive content of TV and narratives and film narratives and documentary.
Yeah.
It's really hard. Like, I don't know anybody that would put on like headphones or headset for VR for more than 20 minutes. Like, it's
well, I mean, they're making some pretty interesting things in VR. Like, Second Life came out with that, essentially like Second Life within VR. But I don't know. I feel like the technology, at least in my experience with virtual reality, is that there's still that separation. Like, and it takes you out of the. Well, I feel like whenever I put on a VR headset, there's always like a little bit of a gap, so I can kind of see like my feet or something. Even like with the Oculus or HTC
I have my
Vive.
issue with my glasses. I can't put a lot of VR goggles with my glasses on.
Yeah.
So
there's like
automatically
certain,
I'm like blind when I'm watching VR. You know.
Yeah. So there's like certain logistical things that.
It's in an experimental phase, and I think that there's no reason movies can't be doing better. It's just like the model, the people who are holding power right now of theaters and like the way studios work. It's like that's going to have to crumble, and I think Netflix is putting a wrench in a lot of these places, because it's like putting a wrench in their machine, because it's like, I mean, I went to Warner Brothers, and like when I walked in that lot, it felt like, wow, this felt like it felt like walking into like some sort of theater company. Right. It's just like, these people don't make anything anymore. Like, they made Dunkirk and a few other good things, but it's like, this is it's a little depressing, but I'm also like kind of embracing the fact that it's like, okay, people still want this stuff, just they want it differently. They want to watch it differently in a different setting. And I think TVs are getting way better looking. Surround sound is becoming more frequent, especially with wireless. It's like people have really nice soundbar systems. I mean, that's how they want it. I guess that's how they want it, right?
I'm just hoping that all the distraction that is happening around us, that this is kind of like people are actually annoyed by it, and they just want to have concentration again on something.
Interesting. So you think that society will kind of come back?
No, I'm not sure. I don't know. I can't see it.
You're hoping.
I'm hoping, but I'm hoping that they're coming back, and they're coming back to read or to enjoy, all kind of artwork and films as well. To. Yeah. I
guess all we can do is really do our part to add to that conversation.
Yeah.
And hopefully the world will evolve or de-evolve depending on your perspective. You know what I mean? But
I mean, yeah, I think society really connects the most to like narrative content, like documentaries, things like that. Like, it's like people still, that's a really important way for people to connect in a different way than like a social media or like following your favorite influencer or something like that. There's something about traditional storytelling that, I don't think will ever go away. And I think that I kind of personally block out all the immediate problems and like frustrations that I feel, and just kind of go, okay, at the end of the day, like, this is what I like doing. This is how I, as a human, I don't connect to people just on the street. I'm like the weird dude who doesn't like talking to people. Like, I'd rather just walk straight. But it's like, that's how I talk to people, and people still like it. And I still get I get fan mail, I get random stuff where I'm like, oh man, this makes me happy that someone's going out of their way to sort of write this thing, or like something happened in their life that I changed making something. I'm like, I'm sure that happens on like a crazy scale for like movies like Lady Bird or Get Out or Moonlight, things like that, where you're just like, holy shit, there's people's lives that are going to be completely changed. Like kids that are going to grow up when they're like 25 and become these amazing filmmakers or poets or artists or, you know, politicians, who knows, you know? So it's like, I think that keeps me going. However silly and romantic that sounds, like that, I think that's kind of my thing.
I think we're all hoping that with the art that we're creating, that something is, you know, hopefully it's adding something to the world, or we at least, we hope it
is. It is.
But so many people said, look, we made so many anti-war movies, and there's still war out there. We made so much artwork that is kind of like saying, well, this is wrong, or follow more this step. And there's still all this kind of like cruelty outside. But I think it's in a way, I once heard this, once you surround yourself with excellence, then excellence will actually kind of like come into your life somehow. So this is the same with, I think, with something that is good and it's around you, and you be busy with it and you connect with it, and then just like, everybody's in some way probably interested in to become a better person, right? Or to change in a way. Or
I think we hope for that. I hope that people want to self-improve.
You don't think?
I'm not convinced. I think people are too distracted to even be aware of themselves. I think unless people go through some really intense, life-changing stuff, I think it's just too easy to just pick up your phone every time you're bored. You know, like just look at everybody when you go into a coffee shop and you just like, and they're waiting for their coffee. They will not do anything other than pull out their phone. And it's sad because like they probably have no interest in looking at their phone. It's just a muscle. They're just like, I don't want to look stupid. Yeah. Or, oh, you know what? Let me check my mail. And they just refresh. I've watched people just do nothing on their phone. And like, I'm just like, wow, like what happens if I don't do that? And I even feel the muscle. What's up?
You know what? Which film or which movie I thought had a really interesting metaphor for the future was, have you seen WALL-E?
Yeah, of course, WALL-E.
Yeah, where everyone is sitting.
Yeah,
like, everyone's like super fat, and everyone's sitting.
And they don't talk to each other.
And, no one talks to each other.
And then when they have to interact with each other, they're like,
yeah,
that's totally.
It's a pretty interesting, poignant metaphor for.
I thought about that today too. That's crazy. You brought that movie up.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I thought about. I was like, that was like, I wasn't emotionally affected by that. That was funny to me back in 2008. Now it makes me sad because I'm like, holy shit, that movie's like kind of right. Like people are these weird sludgy. You know, don't talk to me. Let me just be in my own world.
Yeah.
You know, kind of thing.
I mean, I hope it doesn't come to that.
I think
that'd be horrible.
Honestly, like we're gonna probably all kill ourselves before we get to that. So that I think that to me, I think there will be a revolution in content. I think that I
think there already is a revolution in content.
Yeah, a revolution that's going to be like, you know, the way Trump shakes everybody right now. Like there's going to be an entertainment version of that. I think politics right now is what everyone is oh my God, it's the end of the world. But wait till technology does that, and it will. And it needs to. That's how you're going to get people to want to suddenly self-improve. Until then, they're just going to go about, you know, going, I got to provide for my family. I'm going to go get like a big pizza on sale, use a coupon, eat cancer, feed my cancer to my kids, not even aware of what's in the fucking ingredients. You know, like
feed my cancer to my kids.
Yeah, feed cancer to my kids. You know, like it's hard. It's hard to be aware of things. It's so much easier to just go, whoop, turn off. Like I sometimes I wish. Like, I have a hard time watching even movies now. Like, I sometimes wish I'm not a filmmaker so that I could watch movies with the same excitement as not being a filmmaker. But at the same time, I'm like, nah, this is what I do. I wouldn't be able to do anything else. I'm useless in life other than making shit up. You know? So it is interesting.
But I think there are revolutionary films that are being made right now, like Get Out and Moonlight, and certain things that will definitely shift people's perspective and that are adding to the conversation on a more like worldly perspective. You know,
I think films need to be more of a heartbeat. I've noticed movies when they're just really good films that have nothing to do with what's happening now, they disappear. It's like it doesn't need to be like a movie about now, but people kind of, you know, there's a little.
I think there has to be like some sort of emotional attachment. Right?
Sure, but but that still doesn't. That's not going to bring people to the theater. What brings people to the theater is when they know there's something topical. Like just casting a bunch of black people suddenly will help your movie. Like it's just really very raw statistics of what brings people to the movies, which is kind of sad because people can do dishonest things and milk a current emotional sort of frustration or tension for their own good. But I think I think at the same time, like I as a filmmaker, there's nothing I'm working on now that doesn't say something about what's happening right now. Like I think that's automatically like the first thing that like I think people have to be okay with. Like you can't like making a period piece, it's fine, but if it doesn't talk about something or mirror something now, I don't think people are going to care.
But that brings me back to that whole idea of the emotional connection. You know, it has to.
So, I see what you're saying. So, to connect to people emotionally, you think talking about something that everybody else would be interested in talking about would be connecting?
Well, even through like, I've had this conversation with you before about you were talking about commercialization in mainstream media and being able to affect more people through like a mainstream film with more of like empathetic and more emotionally attached ideas. I mean, you probably said
that's the emotional versus cerebral.
Yeah.
Like a movie like Blade Runner doesn't affect 99% of the populace because the movie requires you to really be cerebral and jump in. I was affected emotionally, but that's because I work on that wavelength. But most people now, like Lady Bird, these movies, even Marvel movies, like as much as they seem sort of like sometimes very like void of being really, really artistic, like they're superhuman though. Even if they're 20th century, there's good guy, bad guy, they're still human. They're still like, I actually like think Marvel, like to me is better than like old Disney cartoons. Like I think old Disney cartoons are kind of evil a little bit to me. Like I think that Marvel is more interesting. It's just a shame because that's like, they're taking over the world and that's all that exists right now. But I think like those movies show people like connection. And if you think about why they go and see Thor movies or Avengers, it's not just because they're Avengers, it's because they're using the same actor and the same character. Those are basically big, giant episodes. It's like watching TV. So it's like, I see, this is what people are interested in. Like I can pull away my sort of bitterness because I want to go make artistic movies and say, okay, this is what people want. They do want this sort of basic level core emotion because we're all forgetting that. It's really hard to feel stuff these days. And so really simple shit fucking works. You know, really simple stuff about growing up or how hard it is being a girl. I don't know. It's really interesting. Like even like Dark, like I feel like there's just really normal, simple human shit that's just talked about amidst this like, complex thing.
Isn't it on the most shows and most films out there some point if you wanna find it, you can actually find it everywhere?
Yeah, but that's finding it. I'm saying like the reason people like Marvel
I think some of them are
hits the viewer easy.
Some of the content is just more straight, right? It's just more obvious there on the surface, and maybe that's making it a bigger impact.
Well, probably because it has to do with your focus thing, maybe. Like because they're not, instead of putting the phone down and being absorbed, they kind of have a little bit of a distance. Your sort of nose gap thing, where it's like there's always this like I've got 15 minutes to finish this movie, or I'm gonna have to pause the movie and come back and finish it. It's like holy shit, it's a completely different climate. And even today when I was playing Uncharted, it was the same thing. Like I was playing this video game and I was like, I'm gonna be into it, but I was like still looking at my phone. When should I be here? Meet Nick and Yoshino. Like when should I get? You know what I mean? Like it was still separating me from the content. So that's interesting that you say that. Like more on the surface. It's like the same storytelling, but everything is more on the surface.
So you think like everything has to be a little bit more graphic and more brutal and more harsh?
Yes, to get
more horror. That it actually touches us.
Yeah, and I
so
would say
are we already so
horror,
detached from it?
Yes, there is a detachment, and I think if you look at a lot of the movies that we talked about, like they're really intense. You know what I mean? Even Lady Bird, there's some like raw shit in that movie. But it's intense in a different way. That's a lot more heartstringy, a lot more personal. But a movie like Get Out, it's fucking it's poking people. Their racism or their how they feel about racism. White people, black people, doesn't matter. Like. You have to poke people more, I think, now. And I think that some people don't like it necessarily, but I kind of think it's important for movies now to do that. I think a Marvel movie is not interested in poking people. Marvel movies like, no.
Well, it's entertainment, right?
Yeah.
This is just going to an entertainment park
and
just go on a different ride.
Yeah.
So
some Marvel movies, Logan.
Yeah, Logan pokes. Yeah, you mean claws you? Yeah, totally.
Yeah, Logan claws you.
Yeah, Logan claws.
Logan clawed
I think
me.
Deadpool kind of pokes too. Like it's in a funny way, but Deadpool's got some fucked up shit for sure.
Yeah.
So I think Marvel's getting there. I think even like Star Wars movies are getting there. It's just I think that's just always going to exist, and we need to figure out how do we bring like cool movies like Seven back? How do we go and bring movies like Alien? Like how do we make those movies interesting for people, but also good? Like them trying to do it now, it sucks because the studios just don't have any faith in just good storytelling. So everything needs to be super genre or super obvious.
Maybe it's also that there's a little bit too much pleasing there.
Interesting.
Like
not enough challenging, you think?
I'm not sure, but maybe the films like Seven or Alien, you know, at the time when they came out, they were just raw, and they just wanted to something. They were different, and there was not this pleasing factor to it. So you just like, you know, oh, you can't say this, or you can't do this, or no, nobody's smoking, and nobody's.
That was like
you know,
very 70s too. It was the time in the 70s where people were just a little bit more aggressive with content, you know.
Well, maybe, but this is what we kind of like missing in a way as well,
yeah,
right?
interesting,
So we did these strong stories, these strong character-driven stories are
70s
just
are back.
different in a way, right?
Yeah, the 70s
I mean,
are
we
back.
still have them. We still have them. I think I thought Blade Runner was something like this. You know,
Yeah,
it
I
had a
thought-
strong
I-
character, and then you follow, and
Yeah.
is this good story?
Yeah.
It's not easy to just fall into it, right?
No.
But it's just again, it's an experience, and certainly cinematic experience.
Yeah.
Sitting there and just, you know, let the movie
Wash over you. Yeah.
wash over you, right?
Totally. That's definitely a wash over you movie, but I think that's the sad part is like some people I just don't think understand that. They don't, or they feel like
But also
this is weird.
the story, The Shape of Water. I thought it's beautiful. It has a story. It has a meaning.
Yeah.
It's very cinematic. It's entertaining. But on the same token, it has a strong message.
Yeah, and I think also that movie's sharp. There's a lot of fucked up things in that movie too that poke you, that shake you, you know. And I think that movie's a very good understanding of like, how do I make something that like your mom and dad would want to watch or something like that. But at the same time, like a lot of people can like it as long as they're of a certain age, you know, or understand. I mean, like, you know, being lonely and feeling like there's only one person out there for you, and no matter how hard it is, I'm going to go and get that, or I'm going to be with that person. Like that's something I think a lot of people at least strive to or hope for. So yeah, in a way, you know, having a story, emotional hook sometimes is just all you need. But I think at the same time, like Shape of Water has kind of got that metaphor of just like, you know, like there's sort of a marginalized character, you know, that sort of this other character is going to help rescue. So, I mean, there's still something that you can attach to modern society with that kind of a film. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I think it's an interesting discussion. You know, I don't think there's no answer. We'll just have to see where it goes. I mean, 2-3 years ago, my predictions were completely different than what's happening now. But I'm always just curious talking to other people in the business and just seeing like, you know, my job's to know kind of like, okay, what's kind of cool? Like, what can I get away with now? What seems interesting? But at the same time, I'm just like, I don't want to care about that. I just want to make good stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and it's really hard because it's like suddenly you're
Well, I think nobody really knows what really is successful and what not, right? The whole thing seems a little bit like a poker game or a roulette. And it's either red or it's black, and there's just so many films where people are so sure that they are a financial success, they totally fail. And other movies where nobody thought, like Get Out, was relatively cheap produced, and it was a huge success, right? There was just a nerve that was hit. And suddenly,
I mean, I think you just look at what that movie was on paper, and I would have been like, "Oh, that movie's gonna be a hit." But the fact that it was that much of a hit, I think that shows like, whoa, people are really interested in this kind of shit. You know what I mean? And I think that blows my mind, but like in a great way. That's where I'm like, yes, that like I'm re-encouraged to like keep going, you know. And that's the stuff that keeps me going. It's tough. It's hard because it's like you see really good movies just disappear. You know, I think Blade Runner, even though like I have my issues with it, it's like that is a movie that's tragic. How sort of like most of the news about it wasn't that it was great. Most of the news about it was that it didn't do well.
Well, I
I'm
guess
just like,
everybody
it's
is
a
now
shame, you know?
everybody is now so very critical. There's also so much content. You just, you know, you really have to make an effort to watch it all. It's in the movie theater, it's out of the movie theater, and there's all these Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, whatever shows, and you're just constantly trying to keep up with all these things. Yeah. So maybe, I'm not sure, it's just there's too much content produced in a way at a high level, and only the peaks actually that is the best of all of it, you know, comes out of this fog. And maybe it was different a couple of years back. Maybe a lot of movies that we really think are great movies, maybe if you would make them now, you know, modern as we are, they would get totally lost because they're just not...
It's not relevant for the time period.
Yeah.
Well, you know, it's funny because... go ahead.
No, I was watching, was it Trading Places?
Oh, nice.
And this was like maybe a year and a half ago. And I was just thinking to myself, if this movie was made now...
It would never have flown.
It's completely, yeah. It's just,
It's the most un-PC movie ever.
oh yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. Richard Pryor, if you watch a lot of Richard Pryor and Gene Wilder stuff, like Richard Pryor always, even behind, like even his, like behind the scene comments are like, why do you think people love your racial comedy? And he's like, because y'all are racists. That's why. Only Richard Pryor would have the fucking balls to say that. He's probably coked up too. But I think, I think it's interesting, and I do think that like when advertising marketing it comes back to or understands that like everyone is niche now. There's no broad demographic anymore. It's no such thing. If you walk into a high school now, there's not just 5 cliques. There's like 40 cliques. Like everyone can be friends with everyone, and everyone likes little things. So once marketing understands niche targeting, it doesn't understand that really. Like, and that's why genre is working a little, because genre always is a niche thing. People like horror, they just are like, they like horror, and horror works because it shakes you. It's always about being intense and fucked up, and we live in a time that it's hard to shake people, so horror of course works. Comedy works too because that's an instinctual thing. So certain genres are working, but you can't hang on to that. Then you're going to start numbing them with that, and then what are you going to do after that? And I think it comes down to like personal interest. Like if I got a movie that's got synthesizers, nostalgia, science fiction, cool kids, black talent, blah, blah, blah. Those, how do I target what people, like what niche is that? Like how do I target those people? Like marketing doesn't know how to do that at all. And until like they sort of understand how to talk to people and communicate every single person that like would go and see your movie, like I feel like that is the answer to me, because content's never going to slow down. It's going to just increase. I think that theaters are going to completely change with how they're going to make stuff. And I think that VR and AR are just going to kind of keep getting up there as forms of entertainment. And then I think they'll become very casual forms of entertainment in about 20 years. I don't think it'll be casual because you have to wear shit. That's not casual. No one wants to fucking wear shit. Sitting in a house putting on glasses for AR, no one's going to want to do that unless it's like for 20 minutes. Like look kids, it's this AR thing. Great.
Yeah, until they implant it into your brain.
Yeah, exactly. People just want to sit and fart and like cook some food and watch some, episodes of whatever or some movies and shit, and that's how they want to watch content now. Yeah. So, until people figure out how to market, like these mid-range budget movies are going to be on hold. So you got to either make movies for $5 million or you got to work for the fucking man. Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyways, I would love to yeah, I mean, is there any last words? What should we kind of end with? I'd love to end with something.
Yeah, I mean, I usually end just asking our guest, if you have any advice for creatives, what would it be?
Like not just DPs, but on a broad level.
Macro perspective.
Macro Nick.
Well, I feel like, being a cinematographer is maybe not the same kind of like art form, like a painter or a sculptor. They creating something from nothing or from something totally different. They create something new. So I don't know if I can have a statement or advice for every artist, but I guess it's like finding your own voice. There's just like you can in a way try to copy other people or to take some stuff in from other people, but at one point you have to find your own voice, and that's the only thing that makes a big statement outside.
I guess if somebody just doesn't know like what the hell art is yet, how could they figure out what their voice is? What would you tell them to do? Like if someone was to say, Nikolaus, how do I become a filmmaker? What would you say?
Well, filmmaker is something different, and what art is. So
okay, artist? How do I become an artist?
I don't know. It's just like you create something, and you have some meaning behind it, and you enjoy doing it, and or you have to do it. It's just something that's coming out of yourself, and you just keep doing it.
So the person isn't passionate until they're feeling like, yes, this is what I want to do. Like how would someone explore? Like,
art
for example,
is also something that is kind of like pressing out of you, right? That is just wants to get out, and you're just maybe a tool that's just getting this strong feeling or this I don't know this.
And so what if someone doesn't feel something like that?
Well, then I don't know. Can you learn be an artist?
I think you can.
I think you can. I think a lot of people don't know themselves yet. I think a lot of artists have like an identity thing.
Yeah.
It's like if you know you, or you're learning you, or you want to be you. Even my desire when I was starting out was like, I want to know what I am or who I am. That was my art. And now suddenly I'm like a little bit more aware of what I want, and that's what I'm making. But I think you can. But I think
So that means basically
anyone can be an artist.
Yeah.
I think in their own way. And so I'm
definitely
curious,
agree
like,
with that.
because some people are fortunate that they know they have a passion and they need to get it out. But
Right.
what would you say, like, how did you know, like, you found out when you were 16, right? You were watching The Shining and the tricycle kid, and you're like, I want to do that, right? But, like, you didn't know. You had no purpose until that moment, right?
Yeah, maybe you need this.
So
trigger.
input. Okay, interesting. So like that's so
I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe that's true. Maybe it's a voice that everybody has inside, and some people are able to bring it out to find this voice, and other people maybe they're not even looking for it. You know, because they think they have a different purpose in life. Or
Interesting. So for
or-
those people, maybe they need to kind of keep looking and see if there's some kind of fire that they feel.
Maybe.
That's interesting, because I think that seems to be the through line. There's nobody that's making art really that's great if they're not feeling the fire, you know? So that passion inside, or there's something that they want to get out and they have to get it out. It's interesting.
Maybe for many people it's also an effort to make art, right? So let's say Cy Twombly. Many people say, "Oh, he's just just being a little bit sketching around with his different pencils and things." But he did it all his life. It was just his passion, and this is his way of expression. And many people say, "Well, I could do this." Well, but you didn't, right? Somebody else did, and did it with passion, and actually had something to say. So. It's just.
So go get passion is your statement. For
Well, I
for
guess
artists.
passion is not necessarily a bad thing if you want to be an artist, or if you want to create something, right? Make something.
Interesting.
I think it's a lot about self-discovery, because I can at least from what I've been through, I don't feel like, I was an artist in the beginning. I started shooting when I was 20. I've been doing photography for about 10 years, and it took a long, long time to figure that out. It took a good, I still feel like I'm figuring that out every day, having these conversations, trying to understand other people, internalizing those processes, coming out with my own conclusions, So, but anyways, that's all. That's all I have to say about that.
So interesting. So it sounds so. Our takeaway from that is like, it's all about passion. It's all about discovery. It's all about getting yourself out there in whatever medium,
Yeah.
It's certainly to find your own voice, because if you're certain about your voice, or let's say a little bit certain, because there's a lot of artists out there that actually have a lot of doubts. But if you're somehow kind of like a little bit certain, then it's also maybe not so important what the world is thinking about your expression, or way of expression. You just do it because it's coming out of yourself. You just want to.
Yeah.
That's how, maybe it's the way you see the world.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Feel, and then shut up and do it.
Yeah. Cool,
All right.
man.
Well, Nick Summerer, thank you very much for coming and hanging with us. And everybody, check out Dark. It's dope. And don't fucking watch the dub. Switch to Deutsch and subtitles, English subtitles. Right?
That's correct.
Cool.
Cool.
Thanks, man. Thank you for coming. Appreciate
Thank you very
that.
much for having me.
All right. High five.
I love Nikolaus. I know I loved him when I first met him. We met for a project actually before, and I knew I wanted him to be involved in the podcast. But I really am amazed at how emotionally intelligent he is, and how thoughtful he is, and how just a lovely guy he is.
Yeah.
For being so technical, he's also so kind of normal. He just has emotions that everyone can relate to. And yeah, I think it's really great to see somebody like him blowing up and doing well.
Yeah, he's a really great. From what he was telling us too, he seems like he's a really good collaborator as well, and he likes to take direction but be able to also put his special little flavor on whatever project he's working on. And I think that will take him a long way, especially with filmmaking when the process is so collaborative.
Yeah, he definitely sees things in a unique way. Like he definitely like has to connect with the director. Like he needs to kind of bond. Like it's almost, he kind of has a similar process the way I have, where it's like I have to kind of be emotionally the person has to be emotionally relatable for me to work with them. Like, and so I think he kind of needs that in order to do his best work. But anyways, we are segueing into part 2 or point 2 episode, which is a new recording that we recorded about a couple months ago. And we get to talk about season 2 of Dark. And we're going to see what Nikolaus is like now. What kind of person is he? Is he super different, or is he the same, or a new man? We'll find out in the next episode. Stay tuned.